And over the last 5 years, really what we found is, first of all, a shift towards more regular employee listening. When we published the inaugural report in 2018, we found the vast majority of organizations, roughly two-thirds, were reliant on an annual survey. What we've seen over the last few years, really accelerated by the growth of hybrid working and the pandemic, is that shift toward more regular listening. So more regular pulse surveys, listening across the employee life cycle. So, and I think that's a really positive step to give employees a voice. And because of that huge amount of change, the idea of an annual study once a year doesn't really cut it with that amount of change. So we've seen that trend over the last 5 years. And what we're going to talk about today is how that has progressed forward backwards, and a real deep dive on employee listening. Second, what we found is a real focus on employee well-being. I think the two factors. I think if I was watching my sins on, we flew out to the US recently, and on the plane, for a big HR take, and on the plane, there was a David Beckham documentary. Some of you may see it, a bit of guilty pleasure.
Of course.
And I think for those of you, even if you're not into football, you may remember when he got sent off in the 1998 World Cup, and huge pressure for a 23-year-old kid in terms of crucified in the media. I don't think that would happen to the same extent now. People would say he's let down his country on that, and with all of this focus on mental health now, I think sort of sports people are held accountable and are celebrated around a lot of money, but we pay much more focus to mental health in a way we didn't sort of a generation ago. So I think part of due to that change, I think in particular due to the pandemic and flexible working, employees now expect their employer to care about their mental health and well-being, and to prioritise that, and much more than mental health. We know is much more than employee benefits. It's a whole strategy around that. So we've seen that shift over the last few years. And what we're doing on today's webinar is really look at how that's evolved over the last 12 months too. And I don't want to give it away, but it's much more important in terms of priorities than it was a year ago. And thirdly, we've really seen another deep dive over the last couple of years, the focus of leaders on having a huge impact on engagement, and in particular, the shadow they cast. And we've seen HR really step up since the pandemic, become those agents of change, and partners with their C-suites on helping understand how does that change in world of work and employee expectations, how to involve their employees in shaping change, how to find the right balance for hybrid working, so you can access hard to reach talent that may not want to be in the office 5 days a week, but also sort of find that right balance for business too, particularly if you're an organisation where a large part of your workforce can't work remotely, that if you're in manufacturing or care, whatever it may be. So that's some of the 4 of the biggest shifts we've seen since we've been running our research over the last 5 years. I hope it gives some context when we come on to how things have changed over the last 12 months.